So in this episode 5, we have a good friend joining us for this podcast, Alicia DeLarge.
Yes.
So thank you for being here.
Of course, I'm grateful to be here.
We haven't seen each other in a couple years in person, I believe.
More than a couple years. It's been a while.
A few? Or a few was more than a couple?
When did we graduate? I guess 2018.
2019.
No.
That's when we graduated.
You know what? No, I graduated 2018 in December. I walked. Okay, let me stop.
Okay.
Yes, I walked in May. You're correct. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm being technical. Okay, yeah, it has been a few years. Okay, got it. I'm being dramatic.
Yeah, a couple. And so really, to give you a little bit more context on the show, it's really about business owners, entrepreneurs, and creatives who I feel that I look up to in some way, or just admire, or just appreciate their skill set, and want to hear a little bit more about their perspective and how they kind of got to where they are.
Awesome, yeah.
And focusing really on the awareness of each decision and how things impacted your life and how you ended up where you are now.
Got it.
So how would you introduce yourself? Like, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and kind of like a title that you resonate with.
Awesome. So my name is Alicia DeLarge. I'm born and raised in Philadelphia. I coined myself as a physical storyteller, but I do that across a couple different, not titles or mediums, but, I'm a production designer for film, where I definitely tell stories through environments. I'm in kind of the physical world in a film or a short or what have you. And then I have also dabbled in curation, where I'm now working with artists to help them develop their craft, to also insert kind of a more architectural element into the experiences that they're building for the people that come to see their shows. But definitely coin myself as a physical storyteller because I definitely, my favorite part of a film is how you can see a whole room before you see the character, and you know every single thing about them just based on the room, right? The thing where something's placed, or if you see a receipt on the counter, they were this place at that time, and just the details of somebody's life, right? Or just the given space. So that's how I would describe myself.
Okay, great. Yeah. You got into some real stuff already with your career path, which I really want to dive into. But before we get into that, I typically start the show with first impressions.
Okay.
And I also forgot to mention that there is an exclusive section of the show.
Okay.
That is at the end where I ask a little bit more deeper questions.
Great. I love deep. I love that. Yeah, this is great.
And so to unlock that, people have to go to buymeacoffee.com/STBY Studio.
Oh my God, seriously?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So if they really want to know Alicia, they really want to know the ins and out, they have to go to it's like a Patreon.
Love that.
Okay, so I'll start. So at UArts, I was in the film and production major. You were in production design, correct?
No, so my major was actually called film design and production.
Well, they had two separate ones, film design and production, and film design, or production design?
No, so I was in the film design and production major, but I focused on production design.
For film?
Yeah, well, film and theater. So basically it was a program, honestly, so at the time it was kind of the first of its kind in Philadelphia, right? Or really on the East Coast. Because when I was looking for programs, I was more so seeing this type of program in LA. So I had went to visit like UCLA, USC, all these different schools because that's where this type of major that was going to teach me all the facets of design, but for film and theater. Because I never want to lock myself into one thing.
Yeah.
And I had already been working for 5 years, right? So I had already been working before I went to school. I just started to see the value of okay, there are things I can learn on set that are great that I won't learn in school, but there are totally things I'm going to learn in school that I'm not about to learn on set, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I'm not always big on people who are like, oh, I built this from the ground up with no training and that's just it. You don't have to go to school. It's I respect that because I did the same thing.
Yeah.
But don't knock people who can also go to school and be trained formally in a different way, right?
Yeah.
So when I saw this program at UArts, I was really shocked. I was like, wow, this is something that they're offering on the East Coast at a really prominent school. And it's funny because my mom wanted me to go to UArts right out of high school, but I just needed to get as far away from my parents as possible, so I went to Spelman. And it's so hilarious how life comes full circle, right? Because then I'm like, oh, I'm right back at UArts in Philly. So I was in that program as a whole, but I was so me and Andrea, because I remember Andrea graduated before me, and then my year, it was me and another girl. I'm so sorry, I hate to forget her name, but...
Wait, the one, Gaida?
No, I can't even think of her name, but we were the only two, I think, at the time. Because, there were three of us, but then the one girl, she dropped out.
Okay.
During the year. But I was among one of the first cohorts to graduate from that program focusing on production design.
But Nick Corney was also in your group, or no?
No, so now that you're saying this, it's confusing me because I thought all of you were just film majors. So you weren't. Your program was called Film Design and Production.
No, I was film and video.
Got it. That's what I mean. So, my program is specifically called Film Design and Production.
But Nick was in your major.
No.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. It was literally me and that one other girl. But everybody else, but that's what I mean. They like meshed us together.
Right, because y'all
there wasn't
was in our
enough
senior thesis class.
Yes,
so
we were in all your classes. That's what I'm saying. Like, they just brought us together, which I actually didn't love, right? But it turned out great because it gave me a lot to do, right?
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Because I remember I didn't see you until I think my senior year. I've maybe seen you walking around the hallways, but I didn't know who you were, what major you were. But then when we had oh my God, we had another class together where we met, and then we didn't work together until thesis. Yeah, it was like because Alexander.
Was it editing?
No, it wasn't. Because you knew my roommate Alexander at the time.
Yeah.
I believe we had one class together. We didn't talk much that class, I don't believe. But thesis, I was like, I mean, the way you dress now is the way you've always dressed, which is like yeah. Which was like, I mean, there wasn't already a lot of black people in our major. Yeah. They was all in dance and music, I feel like.
No, they were.
So then when I found out you was sort of in our ecosystem, I was like, okay, cool. It was really me, you, Maya. Yeah. Was the only black people in our year.
Yeah, that's true.
And I just always knew from the jump, like, just the way you dress and carried yourself, and like you were just very like confident in everything that you did.
Thank you.
I was like, okay, like definitely somebody to like keep note of. And I felt like the reason I went to UArts was not necessarily to learn film. It was more so to just make connections with people that I also felt were gonna go off and do big things.
I feel that.
And I definitely felt like you were one of those people like from the jump.
Wow. Thank you.
And then just like seeing the work.
Yeah.
And for my thesis, I got paired with Gaida. I don't. Who were you paired with?
I actually don't even remember. I'm serious, because my thesis, I did my own project. Like, I don't remember doing a group. I'm lying. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say to you. I served on a lot of different ones. Right. But I also did my own because, I'm just extra. And I was very adamant about doing something myself, So I know I worked with Maya because I still have footage I remember that, Maya. And then I don't know why I feel like I worked with, because I filmed something at my house with, I can't even remember everyone's name. I don't know if Courtney was a part of that, but I just remember I did a film at my house with a group of students because I designed the whole second floor of my house for this film. But I do remember working with Maya specifically because she did a really beautiful film about like this beautiful death, and I did like roses in the shower and like rose petals all in the bath, and it was like blood, and like it was really good. But yeah, I just remember doing my own project. So my senior thesis, I did a whole project about how Philadelphia is full of really cinematic locations that don't really need to be touched, right? Like, it does the work for the production designer, and I feel like those locations don't get enough notice or play. Like, even at that time, I haven't looked at it recently, but even when you go to the Philly Film Office's website for locations, it was pretty sparse at the time, and there weren't a lot of locations that I feel like were of substance, right? There's even this whole project I want to do that I still haven't finished called the Service Centers, where like I'm highlighting all these locations that are places that of service, right? Like laundromats or locksmiths, or, you know, all these places we go to all the time just to get everyday service done. So I picked the oldest hardware store in the city, which is located in Chestnut Hill, Killian's. And
wow, okay, I've been there.
And that's it has the oldest storefront, that's what I should say, for a hardware store in the city of Philadelphia. And I grew up in Chestnut Hill, so it's my neighborhood hardware store. But I think hardware stores are a thing for Philly. It's like every neighborhood you go to has like a mom and pop like hardware shop that has everything, not just hardware stuff or tools, but you could go in there and get a bag of chips. You can get you get whatever you want out of a hardware store, right? It's just like just like a random assortment of things. So I did a whole photo shoot kind of highlighting the beauty of this hardware store that I didn't have to touch, but was a very interesting layered cinematic location, right? That told its own story. And then I remember doing a film. Like, I actually partnered with a filmmaker that I always work with in the city. And because also I was running late and it was last minute and I just needed something. So I got him to come in. He filmed the whole thing. I narrated. And that was my project. But right outside of that, I do remember working with Maya. But honestly, I can't remember. I think I did a lot is what I mean. Like, I was working with a lot of different groups of students to contribute to their projects. Yeah,
because there's the ratio of designers versus film people. Like Gaida and I believe you and whoever, Nick even was helping other people on their projects because there wasn't enough to go around.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go like way back.
Got it.
So growing up in Chestnut Hill, which I didn't know till just now, what was your environment like? What were you like, and what was your environment like, and was it like productive or conducive to being an artist and a creative?
Definitely. So taking it further than Chestnut Hill, so like when I was born, my parents were living in Lansdale, PA. So I was born in North Penn Hospital, and then after that, when I got a little older, we moved to Norristown. And then from Norristown, by the time I was like in middle school, high school, we moved to Chestnut Hill. So I had a kind of a very layered, upbringing. And both my parents are artists. So my dad is historically a fashion designer. So like my mom still has clothes that he made her, right, while they were dating. He used to do prom dresses, all types of stuff. He like was making clothes, but he met my mom and he's like, I gotta make money, I gotta provide. And at that time, as a black man doing fashion, that's like a whole, you know what I mean? Like there was no Instagram or all these things. So he jumped into, corporate America, like both my parents actually, because my mom is a visual artist. She paints, she draws, all of that, right? So both of these artists who had to just make money jump into corporate America, but never lost their love of art, right? So I was always at an art exhibit. I mean, even when I think about my son and the way he's coming up, that's literally how I came up. Like I was always watching foreign films or Bollywood movies or going to art shows or, so very much an artistic home, full of music, full of art. My dad collected art as well, right? So, so I feel like I was always in an artistic environment, and it was always encouraged for me to develop myself. So I also, which a lot of people don't know, is I sing. So when I was younger, that was like my biggest art form. I sang in the choir at my church. My grandmother sings, my aunt sings, like that's like in my family. And so, so that was my thing. I used to do like competitions. I learned how to play the piano. Okay. That was kind of like my art form at the time. And I also was always theatrical. So like my grandmother still has plays that I wrote when I was like 5-6 years old for her, right? I'm just like, what is this? So I was always writing plays, and my dad was like, you were always like a project manager. Like you were always like, even at school, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to produce this play for school, and this person's going to do this, and you're going to do that. Like I was always like a delegator, telling people, but in a production sense, right? Like seeing what people were good at and being like, okay, this is what you should do. This is what you should do. This is what you should do. So yeah. And then after that, writing was a thing for me. So like when I remember being in high school, I wrote this poem called I Am Me. And it was so good in my creative writing class. They had me say it in front of the whole school, like at a, we had like chapel Fridays or whatever. So like I got up at chapel and I said the whole thing, right? So writing was also a big thing for me.
Okay.
So film, to be honest, didn't become a thing. Yeah, I always loved film, but theater, I would say I loved theater before film because my dad would take me to plays. And I remember, my dad tells me, he's like, seeing what you're doing now, I remember taking you to The Lion King when you were a kid on Broadway. And I remember you saying, like, I want to do this. Like, this is what I want to do. But even after that, I just was writing. I was supposed to go to school to be a journalist. So, like, when I told my parents I was going to be a designer, they're just like, what are you talking about? how are you going to make money? You know what I mean?
So before you even got into theater and then film, were you always, do you consider yourself an extrovert?
Definitely.
And were you always that way?
Definitely.
So getting up in front of the chapel to recite the poem was easy, or you enjoyed it?
I enjoyed it, but it was still nerve-wracking. So what you have to understand is even my position is I'm behind the camera, right? Mm-hmm. I'm very awkward in front of a camera or in front of large groups of people. So I'm good with small groups, right? But I feel like, I've always been extroverted. Like I've always been like a character, I should say, but in small groups. So don't think that because I'm an extrovert means that I'm not nervous in front of large groups. I think now I'm less nervous now that I'm older, but when I was younger, oh my God, I was super nervous.
I mean, but were you like the popular kid in school?
I wouldn't say I was popular. I feel like I always had friends, but I'm not going to say I was always popular. You also have to know I was always like the only black girl for everything. Mm-hmm. So I always went to predominantly white schools. So I'm not going to say that I was always popular, but I am going to say that I don't remember a time of not having friends. You know what I mean?
I mean, thinking about like your style and fashion, was that back then too? Like, were you dressing like differently and more like just creatively, or did that evolve later as you got older?
Yeah, I think as I got older, because you have to know when I was younger, my parents had more, they could dictate more of how I dressed, right? So both my parents are more kind of like prep, or like they're more sleek. Mm-hmm. They're less like colorful or, patterned and all that in the way they dress, but they're fly, but just like way more sleek, mm-hmm. right? So I feel like I was more of like a prep. Like I wore penny loafers with the pennies in them, and like I was definitely more prep then. And I went to like college prep schools, right? So I was wearing like Abercrombie and Fitch and like Hollister and like, that was like the time, and like American Eagle. Like those are the things I was wearing in high school. But after I got out of high school is when I had more autonomy, right, over how I dressed. So yes, I would say like the minute I got out of high school, I was, and I mean, I would say yes, and I do have photos from high school. So in high school, it was evolving because I was having a bit more freedom because we didn't have uniform at the high school I went to.
Okay.
Right, and even prior to that, all the schools I went to, I was in uniform, you know what I mean, on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say like towards the end of high school, and then definitely after I got out, my style evolved because I was able to have more freedom in the way that I expressed myself, visually.
Okay. So getting into theater and then getting into film afterwards, what was I know early on you said just the room tells you so much about the character, but what was the initial thing that, like, was it always film design that got you, or as at a certain point, I know you said you sing and sort of wrote and did a lot of other creative mediums, but how did you decide that film design was the element of the space that you wanted to get into?
So that kind of grew over time. So I would say the way my career started was honestly through Instagram. Like I was always a lover of locations, right? So I always loved rooms and spaces before I even knew that I could create them. Mm-hmm. So I always was a lover of like thrift shopping or vintage shopping. My grandmother, I was like the only one out of my cousins that would be at thrift stores with my grandmother growing up and all of that. And so once Instagram started, I used to post a lot of locations because I would just be around the city seeing abandoned buildings, like all types of stuff. I would just photograph them and post them. At the time, I had a lot of friends that were coming up with their own brands who needed spaces, right, just to shoot clothes and things that they were making. So I started getting phone calls like, yo, where was that? Or where were you at? Or, yo, I'm trying to go there. So I was like, oh, it's right over here. I was just walking here. I was just wandering here, right? And then I started to realize that, oh, wait, I can, like, charge people to go do this, right? Like, because a lot of photographers don't have time because they're working on all these other things. So, like, I can really charge people to go out and find locations for them. So I really would say I started as a location scout because I started just scouting locations for people because that was just a thing that I did on a regular day.
So at this point, you had another job, but you was doing this on the side?
Oh my God, I've worked every job. So to be honest with you, I'm serious. My friends laugh at me because I've probably worked every single job in the world. And it's funny because I think about how all these jobs have built up to what I do now, right? And you don't realize that. That's why I tell, younger people, like, don't ever think you're bigger than any job. Like, do every single job that I shouldn't say that. Don't do every job that presents itself if it's like illegal or ridiculous, right? But if it's something legal and it's like you can make money, why not try it? Because you don't know how this is going to feed into, like, for instance, I used to work at an auto body shop. When I was at community college, I used to work at an auto body shop across the street. Random. I'm ordering car parts. I'm like, you know what I mean? But this was my job and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I used to have to drive trucks from Broad Street, from, where was he at? Broad and Buttonwood. I used to drive trucks from Broad and Buttonwood all the way over to like Kensington, right? Port Richmond.
You didn't need a CDL license for that?
Anyway, I was driving trucks. But what's funny is when I got on set and I would have to drive like 14 footers or things like that, people were like, how do you even know how to drive this? And I'm like, because I worked at an auto body shop in college. So I think it's hilarious to see the jobs that I've had, even like times I've had to do food styling. But like I used to work at like Cosi and on Walnut Street, like making sandwiches and making coffees, right? Like it's just like, so I know how to make a beautiful cappuccino and I can get on set and do that. If there's a food styling job, I can go do that, right? Because I've done these random jobs that I hated, right? Some of them at the time, like, why the hell am I here? I don't want to do this. But they all feed in. That's why you have to remain humble, you know what I mean, at all times, and do the work, right? Because you don't know how it's going to feed in. So, okay, back to locations. So, yeah, I basically started at doing locations. And then at the same time, I was always collecting furniture, right? Just in my apartments. I was always out at thrift store shopping, but I would post all this, right? I also started working with a group of older men. At the time, their company was called Search and Rescue, Butcher Shop Rehab. Now they're Modern Republic. So a lot of people know about them in the city. They're builders. They build custom furniture, but they're also collectors, right? So they collect vintage furniture and they sell it. They go all over the country, you know what I mean, and pick things and like resell them. At the time, though, they were doing a lot of retail spaces in New York and in Philly. Mm-hmm. So I started working with them as well while I'm doing this random location scouting for friends. I'm also working with Search and Rescue, building furniture with them. This is why I learned how to use tools, right? I'm learning how to like use a drill and use a saw and all these different things. I'm learning how to stain wood. I'm learning about different types of wood. I'm going out and getting driftwood and all these different things, right? Like I'm learning all of this while working with them, and also learning how to build locations, right? Because we're building retail spaces from scratch all over the city, and also doing fairs. Like one of the fairs we did was Liberty all the time in New York, right? So I'm actually building out whole booths for different brands with them for Liberty fairs. So it's all these things I'm learning at the same time, not even knowing that I'm going to do film, right? So once I'm doing the locations, my homegirl that I graduated from Spelman with, which is why community and relationships is also very important. This girl I went to Spelman with, who was one of my best friends, started doing costume design in New York. So different people, of course, people liked how I dressed all the time, so they would ask me to do styling jobs. So I was like, you know what? I don't really know what I'm doing, so let me go on set with her. So she'd call me like, Alicia, just come work with me this job, work this job with me, work this job with me. So while I was on set, I discovered the art department.
Wait, so you would come from Philly to New York?
Totally. I used to cut class. And I used to get on the train and go to New York just to be on set with DeAndre all the time. I'm not condoning that. But I would do it, you know, because I'm just like, that's why it took me like 4 years to get a 2-year degree, because I was always cutting class.
So were you like failing classes at this point?
I wasn't failing, but I just was taking my time. Yeah, but no, I didn't fail anything. I'm not going to act like I didn't withdraw from some things because I just wasn't committed. You know what I mean? But that was also necessary because my company now, Distant Drummer, was born out of a mass communications class that I took at community. Right? So all these things everything is interconnected. Yeah. Everything means something, right? Even if you think it doesn't. Like years later, you look back like, oh my God, that's why I was there. That's why I did that thing, you know?
Okay.
So I was leaving class. I was going to New York to work with Deandra. That's when I discovered the art department. And I'm like, whoa, people get paid to find locations, to put furniture in these locations, to build props for these locations. I'm already doing this, but I could do it for the movies. Like, I was so excited. I was like, I do the movies. So while I'm on set with Deandra, I'm talking it up with the art department every time I'm on set. Like, hey, I know I'm in the costume department, but this is what I really want to do. So, like, can I get your number? Can I get your email? Are you doing another project? Can I PA? Because I was also PAing, which I think is also important. I know people, like, look down on PAs sometimes, but I think, in my opinion, the art department and the production department are the most important departments on set. You would be nowhere without a location, without production. You know, I feel like production does everything. So I think it's also important to PA, even though people are like, oh, I don't really want a PA. It's like, no, you're going to learn every facet of what's going on. You're going to have a hand in every department if you PA. And yes, it's annoying and it's a lot of grunt work, but it makes everything else a lot easier for you once you grow, because you've already done the grunt work of being a PA on a set, right? So, yeah, so I was talking to art departments, and I'm trying to think. I still did wardrobe for a long time, because I'm not going to lie to you. As a Black woman, I'm always pigeonholed as talent or hair and makeup or costume design. And not knocking Black women who do that, because they're amazing and they're brilliant, and I've done it. But no one ever would take me seriously as a production designer, because Black women don't do production design, right? Historically on set, that's not, even though we do it in life all the time, right? We're curating things every day of our lives, right? But we're not looked at as that. So I was always like, even to this day, I step on set as a production designer and I still get shocked. People are shocked. They're like, wait, you're the production designer? I'm like, yeah, I'm about to go build that. You are? We thought you were talent. I'm like, I know you did, but this is my team. I'm about to go do this.
Now, does that, getting that reaction from people and then letting them know that, no, I am the production designer, does that make you feel good? Or is that like a nice, like,
it used to bother me, but now it's satisfying. But yeah, it used to bother me because it's like demeaning. It's like because you've never seen it, right? You think that this is something that I can't do, but I'm actually about to show you. You get what I'm saying? And so I'm quiet. I just show up. But now it's fine now, because I'm more confident in what I'm doing, right? Before I wasn't, right? I was still super nervous before every single job, and like high anxiety, like hoping that I'm like doing the right thing or doing good and all that.
Okay, so tell us about the first time from being on set with your friends and getting numbers of production designers. Tell us the first time you had your first production design job and how you felt showing up, and maybe not being as confident, but like executing, and just tell us about that.
Right. And it's funny because as I'm talking, I'm trying to think of the very first time I was in an art department, because I keep thinking about wardrobe. I don't know why I feel like my very first job in art department was like official. So this is also a confidence thing, is I feel like I did a lot of smaller jobs, right? But I would say my first feature, I feel like was a huge deal for me, even though I had already done a lot of art department stuff before. But you're forcing me to like really sit down and look at my past jobs, because in this moment, I can't think of my very first time on set in an art department. But what I do remember is meeting Tim Stevens on my senior thesis. Okay, got it. It's coming back.
Okay.
I was with, oh my God, I can't even think of his name right now, and I'm ashamed. But I do now remember my senior thesis project, because this is where I met. It was the jazz film, the one about the jazz culture in Philly. Oh my God, I can't think of this kid's name. Anyway, I met Tim Stevens. This is very like embedded in my brain.
But should I know who that is?
He was at our school.
Okay.
But I don't remember his name, to be totally honest. I feel bad. But Tim Stevens, I met on his set, because he was also older like me. And so we had both already worked in the film industry in Philly for a few years. So we both were, because he had like a legit like production team on set. And I remember being on set, and I'm like, Tim showed up. And so I'm like, who are you? And he's like, well, I'm Tim Stevens. I'm a production designer. I'm like, well, I'm a production designer. This is my set. And he's like, well, I got called in. And I'm like, okay, but I'm just telling you this is my set. And so we fell in love on this set, because after that, he's like, whoa, like, you're legit. And you know how to use tools? He's like, I don't even work with a lot of women that even know how to use tools when they join my art department. So I started working with Tim all the time. But the first big thing that I can like vividly remember, my first feature ever, was Concrete Cowboys. And that's when I stepped on set with Tim, because prior to that, I was just doing like commercials or like smaller jobs. But Concrete Cowboys was my very first like feature that I worked on beginning to end, because I've day played, right? But beginning to end, like, I was in the art department. I was a set dresser for like a union film.
Okay.
That was produced by Lee Daniels. That was huge for me.
That is huge.
And I felt like it was like a break. That was my break. And that was 2019.
After college? Like, okay.
Literally, okay. Right after, like, this was right after we graduated. It was the summer we graduated.
So how did you get did somebody find you for that job? Did you?
Tim found me.
Well, okay, so you met Tim on your
senior thesis at 4U Arts. Because now it's coming back to me.
So who called him in? If you were the production designer on your set.
No. So on the senior thesis, the guy called him in. That's what I'm saying. I can't think of his name.
It wasn't your senior thesis.
No.
Oh, okay.
Because remember you asked me who did you work with for senior thesis, and now I'm remembering, right in this moment.
So he called you and Tim.
Exactly, but because he needed more special effects stuff, and once again, I don't think he was confident in the fact that I could do them.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I mean, it was great to have Tim there, right? I learned so much from him. And then this created this relationship to this day. Like, Tim is one of my biggest mentors, right? To this day. And I remember I wasn't even on Instagram. I had got off of Instagram and social media and everything. And Tim found me. I remember I changed my number. I don't know what I was going through, but I had changed my number. That's why I was like, why did I do all that? And then Tim found me. Like, I remember getting on Facebook one day randomly, and he's like, Alicia, where are you? I have this big job and I need you. And then I'm like, what is it? And he's like, it's this movie about the cowboy culture in Philadelphia. I'm like, what? I'm like, I so want to do this. He's like, Idris Elba's in it. I'm like, yes, sign me up. I want to do it. So that was actually the biggest project I've ever worked on for art department, because like I said, prior to that, it was tons of wardrobe. And I'm not gonna lie, I even got to work with Spike Lee in Philly because of wardrobe. You know what I mean? Like, costume design and wardrobe definitely was a good foundation for me. And it was something that wasn't hard for me to do, and I had fun doing it, and I still worked with a lot of really amazing people, right? But I would say that my first official art department role was definitely Concrete Cowboys. And I wasn't even the production designer, right? I was just in the art department, but it was an amazing art department. So
what was the biggest takeaway you've gotten from working on that feature?
It was the beginning of me. I think the biggest takeaway was like, this was the beginning of my career, even though I had started when I was 23 and I had been doing this. I mean, at that time, I think I was maybe 26 or maybe older, because that was 2019. Caleb was born in 2015. I don't even know. But anyway, I'm not good at math. I don't even know. But at that point, I had been doing it already for years. And I feel like, that was after that, my career literally took off after I did that film. And I think it just showed me, honestly, the access that I have, how talented I am. Like, I'm really capable of getting this done. That was the funnest set I've ever been on, but the hardest set I've ever been on, right? So it's kind of one of those jobs where it's like, if I can get this done, I could do anything. And what I didn't know is the following year was going to be the most ridiculous year of my career as far as work. So I think that film built me up for all the work I was about to do in 2020 that I didn't even know I was about to do yet.
Wait, so what was you said the funnest, but also hardest. What was the hardest part about that?
Well, we're working in like 80, 90 degree weather in the middle of the summer in North Philly as stables, right? So we're with horses, it's manure everywhere. I'm literally working in the stable. Like, I'm mucking stalls. Like, I mean, like, now I can own a horse because like I know how to take care of horses at this point, right? And it was also hard because, there are still a lot of things you face as a woman in a male-dominated industry, but especially as a Black woman in a male-dominated industry. So there were just a lot of other things that I faced on that set that were difficult and strenuous. And then the overnights, I mean, were out of control. Like, we had almost 2 weeks of overnights, which you'll, like, go delirious. You'll go crazy doing stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I had a baby. Like, my son was really young at the time. So yeah, it was a difficult time, but it was so amazing at the same time. Like, I remember saying, if I never work on another film for the rest of my life, this was it.
Wow.
This is the best set I've ever been on in my life, because it didn't feel like I was going to work, right? Like, it was at home. Like, I was getting up in the morning, going down North Philly, like I'm just hanging out with my homeboys all day. Like, that's what it felt like. You know what I mean? And the art department was amazing. I mean, working with Tim is, that's why I said he's like one of my favorite people in life. But he's one of my biggest mentors. And it was the first time where I knew I had a voice, right, on set, because I remember this moment. I had just started working on it. They had probably been working on it probably 2 weeks prior. And it was my first day on set. And we do a walkthrough of this place because we had to build an alleyway of scratch, which was confusing for me because I'm like, we're in Philadelphia. It's full of alleyways. Why are we building this? But we had to build it. So we're at this junkyard in North Philly, and I remember Tim showing me where they're about to pick, and I'm like, Tim, I'm not feeling that. Like, I think that's that doesn't make sense. And he's like, okay, well, tell me why. And what would you do? So I tell him, I'm like, I would pick over here. It's more cinematic. It's layered. We have more space to do. I'm just telling him everything. So I was shocked that we're in a meeting with everyone, with locations, with the director, with everyone. We're doing a walkthrough, and Tim brings it up. He's like, well, I was talking to my team, and we don't think it's good to use this place anymore. We should use over here. And I'm like, wow, he's really pitching my idea. And Ricky, the director, asked him, well, why do you think this? And he started talking, but he couldn't really speak to it fully because it was my idea. Right. And I remember that moment, I just started talking. I was just like, oh, well, because of this and that and da-da-da. So Ricky's like, what's your name? I was like, my name's Alicia. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, you're in the arts department? I'm like, yeah, I'm a set dresser. He's like, okay. He's like, you sold it. He's like, locations, can we do this? They're like, yeah. He's like, okay, sold. We're doing it. And then we moved on. And I just stood there like horrified because I'm like, wait, did I speak out of term? You get what I'm saying? Like, at first I'm like, does Tim hate me right now because I just spoke up? Or did I do the right thing? Right. And you know what I mean? It's always that conversation in your head. But but once Ricky was sold on it, I was like, wow, like, I'm seen. He knows who I am. I was given a voice. Tim didn't shut me down. He was very proud of me. But I'm not going to lie. After that moment, there were some people on set that didn't like me anymore. And there were some people who liked me that didn't like me, that didn't know me before. Yep. Right? So it shifted a lot of things because I wasn't afraid to speak up. But I was afraid to speak up. You get what I'm saying? But I would say that is one of the biggest takeaways is it showed me like, wow, your ideas matter. You know what you're talking about. You're being affirmed by your boss, right? Who is one of the most amazing production designers in the city. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that was a very transformative film for me. And I touched every set, right? So even watching it, I'm just like, bro, I touched every single location in this whole entire movie. And like Idris's house, the first day we dressed his house, and it was just me, my friend Michael, and then somebody else. Like literally, like we went in and we just turned it out. Like, so yeah, so very it was awesome.
Incredible.
It was awesome.
So do you know like what was the budget of that film?
I don't know the budget of it. I do not. I had no idea. I could find out though, because my friend, one of my longtime friends now, who was a producer. Well, she wasn't even. She wasn't even a producer. I think she was maybe like a production coordinator. Now she's an amazing producer, Kaya Proctor. She's so amazing. But at the time, I think she was just on the production team. Actually, no, she was the assistant to the director. So she was like assisting Ricky. Mm-hmm. And yeah, she could probably tell me though. Gotcha. But I have no idea what the budget was. What I also loved about that set is Lee Daniels came the first day, right? Because he was producing it. So he came the first day to see. And every department was still heavily like a lot of white men, right? In every department. So I love that apparently there was a clause in his contract with Ricky that was like, the departments have to be diverse and there has to be women, right? And BIPOC community has to be a part of this. So when I came to, we were the most diverse department, right? Because Tim doesn't play. Like, and I tell him that he always has like a badass woman in his team. Like every time I work with him, I'm working with like another badass woman, like who can like sling a drill and throw a couch and like, you know what I mean? Like it's always somebody fire, like always beautiful, always fly, like always just like here to work. You know what I mean? So our department was already really diverse, but all the other departments were like white men. So it was hilarious. The very next day I come in, and it was the first time I even met, I can't even think of her name right now, but the most beautiful Asian woman gaffer that I've ever seen in my life. And I'm just like, wait, you're the gaffer? She's like, yeah. Bianca Moon. She's my favorite. And she killed it. And when I mean that was the vibe, it's like every single department like transformed the next day we came to set. And it was, it was just one of the best sets. And then the talent was very like with everyone. You're some sets and like talent is over here. They have like special like closed like trailers and you can't really talk to them. Or no, they were eating in the same room we were eating in. Like we had full access to everyone. Like it felt very family, oriented. So yeah, it was a beautiful time. Yeah.
That sounds, hearing about that, because I feel like if you're a business owner or artist, like it's constantly, you don't really know when the next check is coming. You don't really know how you're gonna like eat or provide anything. And you kind of feel like, am I stupid for keep doing this? It's like, did I just get a degree in something that I'm in debt for and I'm never gonna pay it back? And so it's like to be able to have that moment of you know, you kind of feel like you made it, and this was the moment where you kind of like, you know, were able to stand 10 toes down and just deliver and produce, and just like people recognize you, people like, you know, validating the work that you're doing, I can imagine was huge to go through.
Yeah.
So after that, so because I at the same time though, because at the same time, which I never knew that you were doing that in 2019, because I was also, me, Nick, and Ryan shooting the Discovery Channel show.
Love this. I remember that. I think I remember seeing that on your Instagram.
Yeah, but I didn't know you were doing that.
Yeah.
But it was weird because once, you know, everybody was so excited. Oh, you're working on this Discovery Channel. People kept saying, "Oh,
but that's amazing."
I know. People like National Geographic. I'm like, no, aunt, it's Discovery Channel. Everybody kept mixing it up. Oh, he's shooting something for Netflix.
Okay.
Like, no, it's
the Discovery Channel.
Right. But and so like it was great because then we won the awards. It was on TV. Our name was in the credits.
That's
Everybody
beautiful.
was watching. But
yeah,
the hype kind of went away quick. So kind of talk to like people, everybody, your friends, your family knows you're working on this huge project. You're shooting the episode. Oh, Alicia doing this great things, and then it's over. And then like, how did you feel after when no one was kind of checking in on you? No one was like commenting on your post. No one was. I'm not. No one. I'm projecting.
No, I hear that. Yeah. I mean, I think. So honestly, I don't remember per se because, like I said, after that was kind of. I don't think there was a lot of downtime after that, right? Because right, we ended that like August. Yeah, so I guess like the pandemic was about to start because we ended it in like August or September 2019. And then I remember that fall is when like things like rumors were happening and stuff, but like nobody really knew that COVID was about to hit. But I did also after that get calls. Because, like, once again, to be honest, I've worked so many jobs. Most of my jobs aren't even on my resume, right? Because earlier in my career, I wasn't keeping track is what I mean. Like, I can't even remember some of the jobs I've done because I really try to just coin the big ones or the ones that are most aligned with what I want to do, which is also me, like, putting out what I know I want to do, right? Like, even if I wasn't doing it consistently, I know I want to tell Black narratives, right? Necessary Black narratives. So anytime I got to work on something like that, so like when I did like pharma commercials or like, you know, like random corporate stuff, that stuff I don't necessarily put on my website, right? It might be on my resume, but it's not necessarily on my website, right? And then some of that stuff I really do forget, I'm not going to lie. So after that, I got called for another big project. So I didn't have a ton of downtime after that. And what you also have to know is you can't post. So I wasn't really posting during that time because of NDAs and things like that, right? You can't post anything. So only people in my close circle even knew this is what I was working on. And as far as social media, I probably did put stuff on my story, but it was very like vague, right? Like I couldn't put exactly what I was working on or put a name on it or anything. And frankly, I actually don't even think I put, because even to this day, you go on my social media and nobody knows I worked on Concrete Cup. Like I thought about that, like you should post some of your work. You know what I mean? Because I'm also very much so a person that I'm here, right? Like I'm not, when I'm on set, I'm sucked into the moment. I'm not like really, you know, but that's what I love about being on films because it's just like, this is all that matters in the world right now, you know? But I have had moments of lulls is what I'm saying. And those are always hard to grapple with because just to be fully transparent, when I was younger, honestly, this past year, I've just dealt with it is I am validated by my work, right? So I noticed I found a lot of validation in producing or putting out or having something to show, right? Because I'm a product of my generation. I'm a product of my environment, right? And this is what a lot of us get caught up in, whether we want to admit it or not. It's what we get caught up in. But it's not necessarily our faults because we're like born into this crazy Instagram culture, right? So honestly, that's why this year I took a break. Like I didn't work for a whole year and it killed my body. Like I felt so irrelevant. I felt like no one will remember me. I went to London, right? Like I left to go pursue something totally different. But I was so depressed, to be totally honest, because I'm like, whoa, what did I just do? Like, and nobody's contacting me. Nobody cares about me. Nobody's asking me to do anything. I haven't made anything. And to be in a program where I didn't have to produce or really make, I ended up figuring out a way to do it because, you know, that's just like in my bones. But I didn't have to, right? I even had teachers saying to me, like, Alicia, you have nothing to prove to us. Like, they would say that to me because I'm also American, which is a whole other conversation, which is totally different to European culture and the way it runs, right? So, like, they're like, we know you're good. You would have never gotten to the Royal College of Art if you weren't good. So just calm down. We don't need you doing all this extra stuff. But those laws are very difficult is what I'm trying to say. And, like, because you almost get addicted to it. So, yes, I've had moments in my career where I've had laws and they were debilitating and devastating for me, right? But the beauty is they don't last long, right? Yeah. Especially when you're good at what you do and you've created a good network. And I think this was the year that made me realize that, like, wow, Alicia, without putting anything out, you've still created an amazing network, right? You've maintained the one you have back at home. You've built a beautiful one in the UK, right? People like you just because you're you, not because you built a set. Right?
Okay.
They're sitting across from you and they think you're amazing and they love you just because of that. Just because you sat here and talked and said hello. And I needed that. Because I'm like, bro, I feel crazy if I'm not making something or if I'm not doing anything. And then I'm watching all my friends, right? So then it's the comparison. Like, oh, I'm watching all my friends do this. And they're going here. They're doing that. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I'm somebody's mother. What am I doing? Which makes it even worse, right? Because I'm somebody's mom at this point. So, yeah. So I feel like those moments are real. But during that time, I didn't have it. It was like once I was done concrete, I needed to rest because that was like 2 months of my life that was nonstop, right? I needed to rest, which was great. I got to be with my son. Then we headed into the pandemic, but I also got two big jobs. Like, I ended up getting called for this series called Black History Untold by Sophia Ballin. She's a journalist, a really well-known journalist in the city, but now director, producer. She's done 3 installments of this where she focuses on Black history, but in different subject matters. But she hired me for the Love series. So this one was amazing because I served as a production designer. I built a traveling set, which I'd never done in my whole career. So a set that was literally broken down and built up in like 4 different cities. I wasn't even present, which was also nerve-wracking because I was the set decorator for a film in New Jersey that Megan Good produced and played in called Death Saved My Life for Lifetime. Working under a very intense production designer. I was the production designer. I'm just going to say it. I don't even care. Because I did a lot for that film. And everyone that works with me, like, I sourced her whole art department. Right? So, like, I wasn't the production designer for that film. But I was doing them simultaneously, which was the worst thing I could have ever done. It was the worst thing I could have ever done. And so that's what I mean. After that, there was a moment of downtime, and then 2020 hit because BLM, like I said before, we only want to work with a Black female production designer. And this is when I started hearing, you're the only Black female production designer in Philadelphia. I'm like, I am. So that's also affirming, right? Like, well, I am, even though I know I'm not. It's just that nobody else is really using this title, right? And they're not working in film. They're doing this for other, like, events or whatever like that. But yeah, I was very proud of the fact that I was still just in my 20s. And yeah, people know my name. I also worked in New York and LA, so I left that out. So at the beginning of my career, there wasn't even a lot of work here.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So for wardrobe, like I was saying, when I was doing wardrobe, I was mostly doing this in New York. And then when I started doing like intern art department stuff, because I even worked on a series in LA called Giants. I was like a assistant production designer for that, working with my friend Roscoe Spear. And that was on Issa Rae's network, like on her, online network before she even did Insecure. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, I was working in all these different places, which I'll even say that people need to be working all over. Don't just work in one. If you get an opportunity to work in like Kansas, go do it. If you get like wherever you can get a job and create a network, go do it, because you don't even know how those networks are going to serve you later, right? Most of the people I met, I didn't even work with them until 5 years later. But did I hit them up all the time? Of course I did. Did I tell them everything I was working on? Of course I did. Did I just hit them up to be like, hey girl, how you doing? You okay? You still alive? What's up with you? You know what I mean? Even one of the biggest jobs in my career, this lady called me in 2020, right? Which would have been, I'd have been a super maniac if I said yes to this. So Jussie Smollett was doing a film, and this was after the whole scandal thing. And he was doing a film in New York, and I got called to be the production designer for his film. It was actually wild. I had to like tell him that I wasn't going to work with him. But because I was on Death Saved My Life, and I was also doing Black History Untold, and it wasn't enough money, to be totally honest with you, and I wasn't about to stretch myself that thin for that amount of money. But the producer I met with was like, well, I've heard about you, and like, I love your work, and I said, yeah, I'm so sorry. But we ended up, I remember she talked to me the whole ride home one night. Like, it was probably, we're on the phone for like an hour. And we're just talking about life. She's like, okay, Alicia, well, I'll have something for you in the future. 3 years later, maybe 4 years later, this woman calls me, Alicia, I got it. I said, what is it? She's like, McDonald's. I'm like, McDonald's?
Ooh.
That's the biggest brand in the world. She's like, it's the biggest brand in the world. And you're going to production design a commercial for them at Shaw University, which is the first HBCU in the country. And I went to Spelman. So I'm like, yes. At the biggest budget I ever had, and that wasn't even a big budget, but it was the biggest budget I ever had. I got to fly my whole entire team out from Philly. Like, I didn't have to go there and pick a team.
Yeah.
Like, they let me bring my people with me. It was amazing. It was wonderful. Worked with a black director, black DP. Everybody was black. It was crazy.
Okay.
And it was the most beautiful. It was also one of the most beautiful projects I've worked on. Right. So, I know I just went on a tangent though. We're not even talking about
no, like, I mean, that's so like, and I feel like even all the years I've known you, I've never known the projects you've been working on.
I know, because I don't really post.
And I'm like, I know you're doing great stuff and amazing work, but I'm like, I have no idea where she's at, no idea what clients, what projects.
And this was in North Carolina. So that's what I'm saying. I've literally worked in so many random,
that's
you know
so
what I mean?
Random, yeah.
Places in the U.S., but that's how it should be. You know, like, that's how you really get you build your network and you get your name out there. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, we have to finish this conversation behind
we will.
the Buy Me a Coffee. So this is the plug to go and buy me a coffee and follow to get the rest of Alicia's conversation.
Buy me a coffee. I guess I would say for recent things is like this past year was the hardest year of my life. Therapy is not something you do just because something's wrong, right? It's not something we do because it's a crisis. This is like going to get a checkup at the doctor. Just like you get a physical every year, we get our mind checked, right? So this is the culture I'm creating in my household with my son. So yes, I do feel successful, but do I feel fulfilled? No.
What is it about achieving things for you that is so like crucial to like who you are as a person?
You know, that's why as an American, I ran circles around people, and I know that because it's a cultural difference. So I think being an American and growing up in the house I grew up in, it totally embedded in me that I had to be the best.
Okay, well, I mean, that's all the time we got. That was
okay. This is great.
Such a cool episode. Thank you for coming, and thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. So let everybody know real quick where to find you, website, social media.
Okay, so my website is www.distandrummer.com. And my Instagram is @distandrummer with 3 R's. And yeah, those are the ways you can find me. Okay. I'm an Instagram girl. I'm not like really on anything else.
All right, cool. Well, thank you again, and we'll have to connect again.
We will.
All right.